Perfect. So I'll only have to re-record the first part.
Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah. Okay, so what other aspects of a persona do you know about your customer at this point? Value proximity to home, all ages, parents, student athletes. Juliana, what would you say the proximity to home is? Do you know? Anyone else? Characteristics of your persona, your customer, if you're drawing that caricature, what would you say? What would that caricature say?
I think for mine, just like, it was kind of like the valuing the quality of their stuff, like you say, because it's like, obviously, if you're going to pay for storage or something to keep it well, like it's, the quality of that. And then other thing too is like risk. Like, I think a lot of things, like, think about like the company like I've worked for in the past, because like, how do you risk mitigation for not having, all of your stuff at one place frozen? Because like you say, risk mitigation and I guess quality.
So they're gonna have concern about what your risk plan is too, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
You have alarms that go off when some piece of equipment goes down, and who gets texts and what's the response time, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like so, like like a building management system, backup power, all things are, like you say, are very critical for those industries. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Juliana added within 20 minutes. That's great, Juliana. Now you've narrowed that down. So it's not just close to home or proximity to home, it is within 20 minutes of their house. What else?
I think mine would be for people who care about waste management and sustainability and the earth.
Yeah.
They care about gardening. Yeah.
Natural soil, right? I could see some of your potential customers might be concerned about preserving natural habitats so that chemical runoffs don't get in streams or creeks, right? Because I don't spray stuff on my yard to fertilize or whatever. Instead, I use natural things that aren't gonna run in and
Yes. And I also think one of the things I did an interview with a business who has been using the service, and clearly part of what she cared about was the reputation of her business for her target audience. So I think that one of the things that I walked away from that interview with was really thinking about perhaps some of the restaurants in town that that cater to the younger, to the college student population, might be interested in this as well. If I were to give them a special logo that said, this business supports sustainable.
And why do you think that, Rachel? I agree.
Yeah, because I think that the age, with all due respect to all of us over 50 types that are in this class, I think that the age group that has really made this a priority for them are the kids who are sort of from teens to about 40. That demographic is very concerned about these issues.
Yes.
And issues of sustainability. And so what I'm thinking about is not just residential, but if businesses that I can get interested because I'm sorry that I had to come late to class, but they're
That's okay.
factors that you were talking about, their customers have those factors.
Right. So Rachel, one of the things I think you've identified is not only are you going to have to be thinking about your customer, you're gonna have to think about your customers' customers. In potentially, when we get to value propositions, you're gonna have to be thinking about that as well. And yes, if you do the research, the younger generations make sustainability a decision point rather than a nice to have. And that's a very big difference between generations on that aspect. Okay, so Beth wrote middle age and older, college education and above, middle income. So Beth, I'd suggest that you try to refine middle.
Okay.
I remember when my kids thought that when I hit 40, I was old, right? So we have to decide what middle is on both of those. But I understand, and that's good thinking. Spiritual. You might need to define what that is. And
It was,
why not religious?
that's a phrase, like spiritual but not religious should be together.
Okay, gotcha. What about camping?
People who like camping, like being outdoors.
Okay, so those would be in their hobbies to go camping or hiking.
Hmm.
Okay. And what about sustainability?
Driven by sustainability.
Okay. Gardening would be a like or hobby.
Hmm.
Foraging, like or hobby.
Yep.
Family, would that be a value or an orientation?
That's more of the demographic. So families also tend to want to do things together.
Okay. So you meant that as families, not family oriented, okay.
Yeah.
Female skewed, why?
That's just who's been showing up so far.
Okay. And same thing with LGBT plus,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, there's a large LGBTQI plus population within the Druid organizations.
okay. So geographic, you're kind of all around. So
Yes.
is that because you draw from all of those areas?
Yes.
Okay. This will be good when we get to the next task tonight. Because we'll be able to take your chat and drill down on it a little bit.
Great.
Climate conscious, looking to make friends as adults. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to make friends as adults. And so that's a need that I know that I've been that people have shared with me, that once your kids are out of school, then you don't have that built-in friend group anymore.
Yeah.
And so tapping into that desire for grown-ups to forge new friendships.
Okay. Value experiences over stuff. Any experience, or are there specific experiences? Just something to think about.
Okay.
Membership in Druid orders. I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
So those are organizations of people who study or practice Druidry as a spiritual path.
Okay, or other nature-based spiritualities. You've got a really good list. Definitely a good list. Interested.
I've
in-
been working on it for about 5 years, so
Okay, so we just gave you a few suggestions on how to drill down a little bit more on that.
yes, great, thank you.
And then Juliana, I actually did read somewhere that there are more female hikers than male, but more males camp overnight. I have to track down where they saw that. Thank you, Juliana. That's good information for both Kaylee and Beth in their businesses. Cool. Okay, other people with their personas. No, I feel like I've got you, I'm not looking at you, so I have to turn once in a while. Anything else on personas that, of your customer? Or what did they not hit that we should bring to their attention? So, any aspects that maybe help them think about?
I'd like them to look back to the customers you have in the past or you are having now, whether you hit the persona or
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, so what Son is saying is, okay, once you develop this persona or this caricature, now go back and test it against the people that you've had as customers. To make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you find that you have a reasonable number of customers that don't necessarily fit that persona, you probably haven't defined it well enough yet.
Because the problem in business that's you try to grab as many customers as possible, and then you stretch yourself to
Yeah.
get what
We're,
you need to focus. Yeah,
that's our second test tonight. We're gonna really help you focus.
yeah, focus.
Okay, so right now, persona helps you focus on knowing who would be a customer.
Give
Okay?
them the highest priority because many people can be your customer, but you need to have kind of classify them.
Yes.
Which is persona come first.
Correct.
Yeah.
And let me just give you a feed forward how this helps you. If you know that, in the case of Beth and Kaylee, that your customer likes to hike and be outdoors, now you know the kinds of places that you will start to market yourself. Right? You'll want to market yourself to places where people that have that interest go. Whether that's particular clubs online, whether that's particular clubs that they belong to, right? Whether that's particular websites that they visit. So for example, you might choose to pay for advertising in certain places that people that have those interests frequent online. Just as an example, right? So the steps we're taking you through build you to where you need to go for your business. All right? Any more questions about persona? So we gave you 4 different areas that are very broad. We talked about what each one of those were. We then talked from your experience of your customer, you came up with a whole bunch of ideas. And we've started to make the connections of why this is important for you. Some of you that had ideas, we added some thoughts on maybe you should drill down or expand your considerations. Are we good with our discussion to this point on this aspect?
Yes.
No burning questions or concerns, we're okay?
I have one
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, Brandon.
Just thinking for like business to business, like I mean, how do you I guess, best go about that? Because I know sometimes like the psychographics aren't necessarily as easy. Like you say, you can look at like quality aspect, like quality minded things like that. Um, but I guess a little harder to kind of drill down some of those areas because it's sometimes like a corporation versus an individual.
Yep. It is harder, Brandon, and my experience is you have to do a lot more research. You have to now understand what that company believes and stands for. So for example, there are companies that put sustainability very high on their list of requirements for vendors, for example.
Yeah, I've looked at things like, like, I mean, obviously most companies have like I guess like a creed or what they, kind of like what they go
Yeah.
for too. Like, and, some of the things that are helpful in there or like core competencies. Like I know even some of the companies I've worked for, like, hey, here's our like 6 pillars or 5 pillars, and you think about businesses you go for. But
You're in exactly the right space, Brandon. I would tell you to look for their core strategies, their core values, their core pillars of what they believe. That kind of stuff is going to lead you in the right direction. The other thing that you can look at is some of them give back to the community in certain ways, which will also help you to understand what's important to that company.
yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. So you all have a little bit more homework on really finishing out this ideal customer caricature. Okay, and it's going to become important as we go a couple steps further that you know this caricature hands down, you know what they are. Okay, because then we're going to talk about how you reach them. And if you don't know who they are, there's no way you know how to reach them. All right. Everybody ready to keep going, or do we want to take a 5-minute break to do a bio, get a drink, whatever? Hearing
I'm
no.
gonna stay away for 5 minutes.
Okay, we'll keep going.
Good.
All right. So what we're gonna go to next is calculating market size. Okay? And there's let's see. And you should be able to see my entire screen here. Okay. So this is the area that we're going to go into. There's 4 definitions, commonly called PAM, TAM, SAM, and SOM. Okay. And there's a definition for each one. Potential addressable market. That includes people that are not part of your business right now. And I'm going to do a very simple example to walk through. And then we'll try to size that so that you know what to do. Okay? TAM is the total available market that demands whatever your product or service is that you deliver today. SAM is the serviceable market. So the way to think about that is the one that you can actually potentially reach. SAM is reach. And SOM is serviceable, attainable market. That's the ones you can win as customers. Okay? So TAM is the world of your product or service worldwide. PAM is what it could potentially be if you expanded. SAM is what could you possibly reach? And then SOM is what you could possibly obtain. And we're gonna use a simple example to walk through this so you understand it. So let's say we're a coffee shop located in Cobblestone, New York. Okay? The PAM, the potential addressable market, could become all coffee and tea drinkers worldwide. Even though today I don't do tea. Okay, because I'm a coffee shop. But I could potentially do tea. Does everybody follow me? Any questions on that? All right, let's go to the next one. Total available market. For today, as a coffee shop in Cobleskill, it's all coffee drinkers worldwide. Who knows when they're gonna stop into Cobleskill? Okay. Now, will somebody from Beijing be buying my coffee to drink it on a regular basis? Probably not. Which is what gets us to the serviceable available market. So what does that look like? Well, it could be all coffee drinkers within so many minutes of commute of my store, and or all the coffee drinkers that drive past my coffee shop or walk past my coffee shop as well. What does that mean? Those are people I could reach. As opposed to the person who isn't coming to Cobleskill from Beijing, they live in Beijing. They're probably not buying coffee from my coffee shop to drink tomorrow morning. So everybody see the difference? And then the last one is important because we're going to try to calculate it. In my opinion, the first three, San might have a different opinion. In my opinion, the first three are very important to think about. But the fourth is important to quantify. Okay? It's going to become your beachhead, as we will talk about later.
So prime time more relevant to big business.
Correct.
Small business, so the lower, the more, it's required you to know.
The smaller the business, the more you need to be in SAM and SOM.
And then later beachhead.
Right, and then later beachhead, right? So there's value to quantifying SAM, but you have to quantify SOM.
Yeah.
Okay? So let's talk about a serviceable obtainable market. So let's just converse. If I'm a coffee shop in Cobleskill, am I going to get all Cobleskill coffee drinkers as my customer? Unlikely. Why? You're absolutely correct. Why?
A lot of different factors.
Let's name one.
How big is your
Just name one.
space?
Just name one.
How many people can you accommodate in your space?
Okay, I might not be big enough. Very good.
Drive-through.
I might not have a drive-through. How many of you drink coffee on the call? How many of you drink Dunkin' coffee? Nobody. Okay, one of you.
I was thinking like brand loyalty, even like is the thing that it's hard to compete with.
Very good. Some people are gonna be very brand loyal and you're not gonna win them. Some people are only gonna drink Starbucks. Not in Cobleskill, because it's not here, right? But some people are only gonna drink, I'm not a coffee drinker, but vanilla bean from Dunkin'. That's all they're gonna drink. So what the concept here is that we have to realize we will almost never win 100% of the market. So what serviceable, attainable market is to try to define what we could potentially actually get. Any questions on our objective? All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about this. So if and we're going to try to quantify the serviceable obtainable market for a coffee shop in Cobleskill so that we understand how to do this. Okay. So what might we need to know about Cobleskill and the marketplace to be able to put a number to our serviceable obtainable market?
How many residents?
How many people live in Cobleskill? Very good. Which means now you need to do some research. So I'm going to show you some research. And you want to go to places. This is Data USA. And all of this data I'm scrolling through is all Cobleskill data. You can find a ton of data about marketplaces if you find the right places to look. Okay. So this says there's 4,350 people. 98.2% of them are citizens. And this data is as of 2021. Okay. So if we go back to our, I think it's this one. Yeah. We go back to here. All right. So I'm sorry, you're seeing my cheat questions to lead the conversation. So do all of those 4,350 people drink coffee? So what's the percentage of people that drink coffee?
Couldn't tell.
Couldn't tell you. Guess what? We got to go back to research. So, this was to show you that you have to go to a reliable source. Here's another one that I found that said we have 6,239 people in Cobleskill. Guess what? I looked at that, I'm like, I'm shocked. I kept looking at data. And I'm like, yeah, they're wrong and they're outdated. It's 2018. So you have to go to good, reliable sources, okay? And look at what I found. Joe's Garage. And what is it? 11 essential coffee drinkers statistics. And what do we find? It's the second most consumed beverage behind water. I had no idea. And in the US, 63% of all Americans drink a cup of coffee every morning.
Really,
63%. That was way higher than I thought.
That's not the adult population.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to that. 63% of Americans have a mug every morning. 66% drink it every day. Far larger than I expected, not being a coffee drinker. Okay. No, we're here. Okay, so Bobby, you went to the right place. How many of the people in Cobleskill are adults? Back to research. I found a source for the census that said people under 18 years were 12.6% of the population in Cobleskill. So we got to go back to our calculations here. That means 87.4% are over the age of 18. So now let's think about this. We started with 4,350 people. 87.4 of them are adults. Let's just assume that kids don't drink coffee. They're definitely not gonna be your daily drinkers from your coffee shop, that's for sure. And it's not every adult, so it's 87.4% of that 4,300. And then daily drinkers are 66%, assuming Cobleskill is the average of the US. Of that, which brings us to 2,509 people in Cobleskill are the maximum coffee drinker marketplace. Will we win all of those 2,509 people? No. So now we have to figure out what are our assumptions going to be of how many of those 2,509 people can we obtain? Now, let's just, for the giggles, go back to psychographics and other behavior traits. So 2 of you said you were coffee drinkers, right? No, you're not. Oh, I thought 2 of you did. Art, you're a coffee, okay, Beth and Art are coffee drinkers. Beth, do you mind telling us when you get your first cup of coffee in the day?
Probably around 9
And how do you get it?
at home.
Okay. Art, would you mind sharing the same information?
About 7 or 8 at home.
Okay, so if they were our typical 2,509 coffee drinkers in Cobleskill, would they be buying their first cup of coffee at our coffee shop?
No.
No,
No,
Unless you can find a way to persuade them.
correct. We would have to go to persuasion, right? Because they are not, what that tells us is 2,509 people, out of that 2,509 people, some portion aren't going to the coffee shop for their first cup of coffee. They're getting it at home. Art and Beth, do you mind telling us if you buy a cup of coffee somewhere once a day?
No.
No,
No. So again, if they're typical of Cobleskill residents that are coffee drinkers, we're not selling a cup of coffee to Beth or Art once a day. So that is background proof, anecdotal proof that tells us there's no way we can assume we're gonna sell 2,500 cups of coffee. Because Art and Beth are 2 of those 2,500 people, and they don't buy a cup of coffee every day. Does everybody follow me? Art and Beth, please pretend you're in Cobleskill, New York, okay? All right. Is there any question on the logic that we just walked through? Okay, so, go
sorry.
ahead.
One thing, I mean, I guess if you think about the population of Cobleskill thing as like a, like obviously being a college town, is that's going to sway the population pretty greatly, when college is in versus out too.
Correct. So I kept this simple, but Brandon, you're exactly right. If this was my business, I would go through this exercise, and then I would go through the same exercise for college students. Okay, because we have a college in Cobleskill. Right? Everybody's clear on where we are right now, right? That there's no way we're selling 2,100 cups of coffee a day.
Right.
All right, now you all need to, in your business, get to that point right there. To understand what that 2,500 is of your market. Okay? And then you need to realize how much of that could you possibly get. That's the second step, and we're going to talk about it. Now that second step requires assumptions. If you notice up till now, everything was fact driven. I went and found data and built a model. Okay? Now we have to make some assumptions. We already brought one up. People buy from Dunkin' in Cobleskill. So I have to rob customers from Dunkin' to be able to get them, right? I have to steal them. Am I gonna steal 100% of Dunkin's customers? No. So I would have to make an assumption of how much am I gonna steal from other people? Cause people are getting their coffee somehow. That's, go
I
ahead.
mean, just think of like drilling this down further. Do you search like demographics of how many people go out for a cup of coffee every day and then kind of look at that? Because I guess that's
Absolutely.
And buy.
okay.
Yes, if you could do that, I didn't get that far in my data search. But if
Okay.
you could find that, if you could find that data, Brandon, that would be great. Now we'd be able to take the 2,500 and put a number to it, right? We already know that it's not 100% because Art and Beth are representative of our population and neither of them buy their coffee daily,
Yeah, correct.
right? So we know it's gonna be some subset of that 2,500 people. I didn't get to do more research to get data. But I would guess I could probably find another data point that would say in the US, X% of people buy a cup of coffee at least once a day. Buy a cup. Okay. And I'd search, if this was my business, I would search for that data to try to drill this down one more level. Let's say that number comes out to be some percentage, 30%. Let's just play with me for a little bit, okay? 30%. So we're gonna take the 2,509 and multiply it times 0.3. That's gonna bring us down to 753 people in Cobblestone. Now, let's say that 753 is a real number, okay? Will we still win all 753 of those people that buy a cup of coffee once a day in Cobblestone? No. Okay, so we'll add a level. Let's just pretend we did that research. We'll add a level that says 753 buy a cup of coffee per day. Okay, now we have to make assumptions. Most people are buying their cup of coffee and they're fairly happy with their cup of coffee because they're going back and buying it again. Which means, to Bobby's point, I have to persuade them to buy my coffee instead of wherever they're getting it today. Can I persuade them for free?
No.
Probably not. Okay. Now I can persuade them for close to free. How might I do that?
Oh, you mean it, whether or not it's free for them?
No, I mean me as a business. Can I persuade them free for my business in some way, shape, or form? There's
I
no
would say, like,
persuasion that's
sampling.
total.
You do like small samples of the coffee, things like that, versus like outright marketing is gonna, have a cost that's lower. Because I mean, you're hitting at your,
Very
your
good, Brandon.
as cost to produce versus your, cost to sell and make, but
Right, you're going the direction that I'm thinking. I could put a grand opening sign outside. Won't cost me a lot of money. Will some people stop in and buy a cup of coffee? Yes. They'll try it. Okay, it's not free, but it's close to free. I pay for one sign, I put it outside on the sidewalk, and people will come in. Grand opening sign, right? But for the majority of people, I have to convince them to come to my place to buy coffee. How am I gonna do that?
I think that a lot of that depends though on which segment of the coffee market you're going for, because how you're gonna convince Dunkin' Donut drinkers is different than from how you're going to convince Starbucks drinkers.
Thank you. I think that's Rachel. I can't see you right now on my
It
screen.
is, I'm sorry, yes.
No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I'm frozen.
I totally agree. So if my coffee shop is a full service coffee shop where I can do lattes and all kinds of other stuff, then potentially I could cater to all of those potential drinkers, right? So here's what we have to start doing now. We have to start making assumptions. We never will get the whole market from day one. We probably will never get the whole market. Ever. Hopefully, we're successful and we get more of the market over time. So, what do we think is reasonable to take from others when you open? That's what you have to ultimately think about. And what's going to give you more than a guess is going to be the factors we talked about earlier of knowing your customer, what their behaviors are, what the psychographics are, what their demographics are, how much can they afford to pay for a cup of coffee? That can become very important. If you're charging $10 a cup of coffee, and on that stats sheet, you find that the average income, family income of Schoharie County is in the 40s, they're probably not buying a $10 coffee, right? $10 cup of coffee. So it's going to be some subset, and you're going to base that estimate, I don't want to call it a guess, you're going to base that estimate on the data you've drawn from your customers to say, look, I'm offering something different that they told me they can't get. Therefore, I'm going to acquire a larger share. Does everybody follow what I'm saying? Any questions on that? It's not a guess. If you go like this, you're doing it wrong. Okay? If you put a blindfold on and throw a dart, you're doing it wrong. You have to go back to the things we talked about in task 2.1 to quantify this. So, do you want to add anything to that? Any questions? Okay, so let's just assume, I'm going to say we get 10% of our obtainable market. That's 75 cups of coffee. How much does a cup of coffee cost?
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Dunkin'. We're in Cobblestone. How much? $2?
$3?
$3? Okay, 75 times 3. That equals a whopping $225 per day. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's not gonna cover your storefront rent.
Exactly. So this task is going to lead us to the viability of our business, which we're going to get to for you. Okay, so you have to get to this point for us to have further discussion about your business. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Any questions on this?
But don't worry, you.
Yeah, don't worry, there's ways we can
Add
address
lotto
this.
cards to your, right.
Right, there's ways we address this, right? Lotto cards, what other services do we have?
Oh, yeah.
Do we add donuts? Do we add pastries? Do we, right? There's ways to address it, so I don't want you to go, oh my God, I can't live on this, there's no way this business is a failure. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is each of you have to get to this point so we can talk about your offerings, your products, your services. Does everybody follow me?
The other scenario is you sell just coffee through the shop of other people. They sell other things. You
Yeah.
don't have to sell everything. You sell
Right.
just coffee, and that's maybe enough.
You could go into selling beans, so that now people that make it at home, they're buying your beans from you,
Yeah.
right? And there's a local coffee bean roaster in Colesville, right? So you could get into roasting your own special blend if you wanted to. There's tons of things you could do. But you have to get to this point so that then we can have those dialogues. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is there any question on the process to do this? Remember, this is not a throw a dart exercise. Okay? I'm sorry we entered math. But it's simple math. It's not hard. And as I showed you, it's not hard to find the data. I spent 30 minutes looking for data.
Yeah.
Right? We're not talking about rocket science here. So Kaylee, you could easily find some data on what percentage of the US population camps. I guarantee you can find data on what percentage of New York State residents camp. I bet you could find data on what percent of New York State residents camp in New York. Right? That's what we're talking about, is just gathering some simple data that directly relates to your business.
In-
Yeah,
Even-
I'm gonna have to go back and look, but I had signed up for some vendor fairs for this summer, and I know in one of the information packets it had information on how many people like attended the same event last year for each of the events. So I could absolutely use that data to kind of hone it down to how many people might visit my booth and buy something, you know, and use that
Yes.
to make sure I'm prepared with enough product for one event versus another, especially if they have very I know the two I signed up for have very different attendance projections.
Yeah.
So that could definitely be helpful for me.
Absolutely, Renee. And when we get further in this business development for you, you're going to, and we get to the marketing and the expenditure piece, you're gonna make decisions based on exactly what you're talking about. Do I go to this show or that show? What's the focus of the
Yep.
show and how many people show up at it? We're gonna make those decisions.
Which, I mean, even thinking for like, you know, obviously camping or something that's like a tourist driven in some capacity. I'm sure you can look at it, people who camp in New York State in that area versus tourists that come to the area and the percentage of people that camp. Because like I say, that might be two separate ways of looking at campers as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
campers and tourists are very different clientele.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
true. But if you go into glamping, they could blend.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I know, I'm not saying you need to, I'm just saying,
No, I know.
right? There is a place where there's an overlap somewhere in those two markets, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Me-
that's kind of where I am, in the middle of those two markets.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have like obviously talk about, you know, camping and outdoors. Like, I mean, there's a site that's kind of like an in-between level of glamping where it's like tent or, you know, and it's more like a canvas tent. Like you kind of make it set up in a different way that kind of draws people in a different capacity versus like, I know, Kaylee, I did look up the camping website because I was curious, but you guys have like a level of tents versus like, you know, like a pre-built, you know, cabins kind of too. That might be like an in-between offering that's a lower cost too.
Yeah, I have a tenter site, Brandon.
Okay,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
all right, is anyone concerned with this task? Okay, then let's have a conversation. Somebody be brave and tell us your business so we can start to define this for your business. Anyone? We're gonna help you.
I'll
You
jump in.
my
Oh, go
business.
ahead.
No, Art, you go ahead. You go ahead. Because I
Rachel?
wasn't, I got kicked off the internet, so I didn't hear what the task was. So
Oh, what I said was, now that everybody understands this simple example, somebody be brave, tell us about your business, and we'll all collectively help you walk through this exercise. We'll help you. That'll be our discussion, so that hopefully all of you walk away knowing how to do this.
I'm fine with you. Art, if you want to use yours, that's fine. You welcome to use mine.
Go ahead, Renee. I don't have all the data because I don't own the business. I'm consulting. So time might be more efficient because it's your sweat, right? It's your business. So I'll defer to you just from being able to go through this exercise, if you'd like.
Okay, Rachel.
Scott, could you stop sharing your screen so we could see each other
Oh,
better?
yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Yep. There we go.
So
Oh, Juliana said something. Is everybody watching the chat? Brandon, Juliana said, could it be worth Brandon going to some big name websites or local potential customer websites and looking at their mission statement? Yes, absolutely. And somebody gave a thumbs up. I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the chat. You know, I think that's kind of helpful.
And then competition with SOM, should we also do a sensitivity analysis? Not yet. We'll eventually get to SWOT, and that will help you sensitize the SOM. Okay. So right now, let's just concentrate on figuring what your SOM might be. But in the end, Juliana, you are thinking the right way. Okay.
So
And where that will play out, I'll just give you a simple example with my coffee shop. Is what is the price sensitivity as I raise the price per cup of coffee to people buying their coffee somewhere else now? Okay, that's really what you're getting to. Okay. So Rachel, tell us about your business and we'll try to help you.
So my business is picking up people's compostable waste and taking it to a compost center. That's the piece of it. The transportation is the piece of it that I'm working on right now.
Okay. So you're just transporting, you're not taking it, collecting it at those people's yards, right? They have to have it gathered for you already.
So what I do is I give them a bucket each week
Yeah.
that with a liner in it. They fill the bucket with their food waste from their kitchen. And I come by each week and pick it up and take it to a compost pile.
And is it only food waste or is it anything compostable?
Huh. Yeah, you asked the big questions. Right now, I'm taking over a business that was very nascent and is right now in hold pattern. And that's a piece of it that I'm trying to figure out. So
Okay.
my long-term goal is to do food waste and green waste.
Okay.
To start with, I'm just gonna focus on food waste.
Okay. So you're already defining your beachhead before you're defining your song.
Ouch. Okay.
So what's your song? Please chime in if you disagree. Because she's already deciding that the space she's gonna play is food waste only. Instead of all compost. And what geography are you covering, Rachel?
Right now, the Oneonta,
Only the city, the town? Or the general area?
the general area.
So how far from city center will you go?
Honestly, I haven't really defined that yet. I don't think very far to start with,
Okay,
because I want this service to work well
yeah.
before I take on too much.
So let's put a number on not very far. 5 miles?
I would say 5 miles from the city center, yes.
Okay, 5 miles from the city center. All right, so the first step would be to figure out how many people have food waste in that area. I'm not saying you need to calculate that right now, but that's your first step. So what would we want to look up or research to be able to do that? Everyone is.
I would look up the number of households.
Awesome. Yes.
Okay, number of households in 5 miles from city center of Oneonta. So that's a number you're gonna have to go find.
I mean, if you're talking about food waste too, do you look at businesses as well, like restaurants?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Okay.
the other group that I'm looking at are restaurants.
Okay.
Okay, so to Brandon's point, I would recommend that you do households first. And then do restaurants in the same geography as a second one and add them together when you're done. That's what I would recommend. Would you
Okay.
recommend something different?
I would recommend the restaurant first, because they have a volume.
Bulk, right.
Bulk and
Did,
volume.
did you hear what San said?
That he would do the restaurants first because that's gonna,
Volume.
Small
Bang
number
for the
and
buck.
volume.
Okay.
Small
Yeah, it's
number.
gonna bring you volume.
Because they have to do transportation.
Correct.
That's maybe an issue for you.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
All right, so the first thing we need to do is quantify those two
Segment.
segments. Yeah, we'll call them segments. Then, will each of them, Rachel, will each of them and collectively help? Will each of those households / businesses actually compost? No. So what are we gonna have to do? We're gonna have to get some compost percentage that we apply to this. So we're gonna have to go out there and research what's an average of food restaurants that use composting services. And what's an average of households that use compost or that do compost? That would be our second step in those two. You following?
yeah. And I guess my concern on that one is in some areas I can find that data, but in some areas there are very different incentives financially to do composting. And like some places you have to.
Yeah, but you've already defined your place.
So I'm gonna need to figure out what percentage of restaurants and households compost in areas where it's not required.
Well, is 5 miles from the city center of Oneonta, is it required?
No,
Okay, then all of it's gonna be not required, correct?
correct. No, what I'm saying is that if I go and look at data about percentage of households that compost in the US, that's gonna take into account places like,
Oh,
I know,
Great
like my sister's neighborhood in Denver, you have to compost.
great point, Rachel. Yes, you're gonna want to try to refine that to people that compost where it's not legally required. Yes. Yes. Great qualifier. Excellent. Okay, now once we have that number, are you gonna get all of that?
No.
No. So now you have to go back to the criteria that we talked about, demographics, psychographics, behaviors, etc., and make some intelligent estimate of what part of that market do you think you can actually get. And your interviews of people will help inform that. Okay, so from what you've told us, Rachel, I would definitely have 3 or 4 restaurants on my list of potential interviews. You know, wherever you go out to eat, where you like to go to eat, say, look, you know, I frequent your restaurant. Would you mind giving me 10 minutes of your time sometime when you're not busy? Could I schedule an appointment with you to do an interview for a project that I'm working on?
Okay,
And I would talk to a few restaurants because they're gonna be critical for you to understand what drives their decision, whether they compost or not. And that's going to inform how much of the market you can actually get. You with us?
I am.
Okay, so another volunteer can help. We've got some more, we've got 8 more minutes before our normal time to go to office hours, so who would like to go next? We can help. Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I can go.
Okay, Brandon?
I mean, I was looking at obviously cold storage. I was kind of leaning in towards like pharmaceutical storage just because I have familiar with that, I guess, in some level. But I mean, I
Okay,
guess in that sense, like, I mean, I think I was looking at a pretty wide range. I mean, I think, even in this Cobusco area, it's like kind of centrally located a little bit between, if you think areas, like a lot of companies have headquarters in like Massachusetts, Boston area, and New York City, and this kind of provides that in between around this area. And then I know there's companies in Albany as well, but I don't know
so
if you expand further than that for like a search area, but
when you say cold storage, help define it for us. Is it cooler and freezer?
I was thinking more of just like freezer level, so like um -20 to like -80
Okay.
Celsius.
Okay. And you said you wanted to go to businesses,
Yes.
individuals. All right, so the first thing we're gonna have to try to define for Brandon is what?
One thing for me, primary factor would be how many are, if you're doing pharmaceuticals, whether it's an independently owned pharmacy, or is it more corporate? For instance, Walmart, you have to run contracts through their home office, where an independent pharmacy,
Okay,
it's unilateral.
so would we put that at the top or a refinement as we go down?
That's my first question on that.
Okay.
That would be at the top for me, because that's my market. If that's my one little space that I'm working in, how
Right,
many are there?
but it's not just pharmacies, right, Brandon?
No, I was saying like, like obviously pharmacies could be part of that, but like pharmaceutical, like I guess, I mean, companies that require cold storage is like within a, I don't know, like a certain radius, I guess, would be probably a first search.
Okay, yes, so I think first you have to define. Within a certain distance, what companies actually need deep freeze. You might find totally different businesses that you didn't even think on the list, right? He's thinking pharmaceuticals, but he might find that, I don't know, baseball gloves needs it, you know, I'm making it up, right? But the point is, we don't know until we go and look. And you might find a market you didn't even know was there.
Especially maybe agriculture with so many new technologies, so many new medicines for agriculture and livestock.
Yeah,
That could be in our area, a serviceable market, given the technology advancements or the medicinal advancements.
yeah, I just, as I was listening to you, Art, I just thought, you know, they might. It might be a practice to freeze seeds to elongate their life, I don't know. Right? Okay, so that would probably be first step on Brandon. What might be second? What might be the next step?
Probably number, I guess if you think about like the number of companies that would use it, I guess the number of companies that outsource it. Because if you think about it, like you're obtainable, like if people do it in-house, like that's like you say, it's kind of like with the coffee example.
Right.
Not somebody you're gonna get.
Yeah, so how many, what percentage of those companies actually do it out of house? And we, you know, what you might have as a step in between, I don't know, because I don't know this marketplace, the industry that you're talking about. But you might find that when you do the research of who needs it, you might find it's 3 different industries or 4 different industries. And you might now need 4 different data sets of what is the average in that industry of outsourcing that service? Because it might be different based on the industry. Do you follow what I'm saying, Brandon?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay. So I think that's a good second step. Son, would you agree? Okay. So now we've got down to outsourcing. Now what might we want to think about? Did you put the distance in the first one, or are you gonna put the distance in now?
Um, I guess probably distance in now. I mean, distance is. I don't know if distance is necessarily always like a deal breaker for this. Like, I mean, from companies I do know, like obviously, it's convenient, but not deal breakers for the industry. For some, depending on what it is, you know. Obviously, if you think about, I don't know all the industries. Like if you think about like Art's point for meat and stuff, obviously to not have to do distribution for a cold, you know, obviously under cold conditions is helpful, but to store something cold isn't necessarily always a deal breaker. But
Okay,
I would think though within like a 3 hour radius, I mean, just from like my understanding of the market is a lot of people want something that's within that distance.
and how are you gonna determine that for your business, Brandon?
I mean, I guess you'd have to do some, I guess, market research with customers kind of like within areas, like, you know, what's their comfortability. I mean, like you say, it might be that part of the interview questions I didn't really think of as, you know, like how close do you want this to where you're centrally located versus, I mean, there could be
Very
things
good.
too, like there's a hub close to something else that makes more sense. So,
Very good. I think you're gonna need to add that to your customer questions for sure.
so,
Okay, now where might we go? I think this might be a good place to look at decision-making authority, which is really what you're getting. Do you follow, Brandon?
no, sorry, I missed that. What'd you say?
What Bobby had suggested earlier was along the line of thinking around whether they were independent and could make a decision. So local decision-making authority is going to have to be in your decision tree somewhere.
Yeah, agreed. Well, like you say, if also it's a quicker decision versus, I guess, a longer decision when you go through bigger corporations, you know.
Quicker for sure, but also sometimes whether it's even possible,
Yeah, true.
okay? A bigger company might just do a contract with a worldwide firm and say, Okay, now, we got to that point. Are you still gonna win all of that?
No.
Exactly. And yours is more complicated, I think, Brandon, because in my mind, you're gonna have to get to go back to your customer stuff and really think about it. And here's just some things in my mind that you're gonna have to think about. How big of a space do they need? Because you might not be able to be big enough.
Yeah.
What size freezer space capacity wise do they need? Do they have any special conditions that they need? Does it need to be rackable or all kinds of lists?
If there's health codes involved.
Yeah, if there's health codes involved.
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's definitely like I mean there's safety concerns too, obviously, depending on storing, you know, like you're thinking about medicines and things like that as well. So
But what I'm getting at is I think there's gonna be a lot of customer characteristics from those 4 things we talked about that are gonna narrow down your market, your potential obtainable market,
yeah, no, agreed.
okay? So it's gonna be really important that you think through those things. And some of it's gonna come to what's affordable for you to do and based on what their needs and problems are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think that's something like obviously I like looks into this class for interest too, is like, you know, if you do have somebody who has interest in bigger storage, like, you know, how do you go after that kind of funding potential too? So
Right.
that'd be
Right.
probably a little bit later on, but yeah, agreed. Obviously start off big is not an easy thing.
Yeah. So that's the second example we've walked through. And remember, the objective you're trying to get to is a number. You have to get to a number. Okay, quantifiable.
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
Are there places that you could recommend that we look for these kinds of data?
Well, the thing is each of you are in very different businesses.
Right,
So
right.
there's not one place that's gonna work for all of you. Okay.
Okay,
For all of you, you're probably gonna wanna go to some sort of census data in one way or another. How many, even in Brandon's case, how many businesses exist in a certain geographic region, right? That's in census if you dig deep enough. And the other thing I would do is I'd encourage you to look for multiple sources and figure out where they're getting the data from. Sometimes that requires a little reading, right? To understand, is this primary source data or are they pulling this from somewhere else? And you want to get to primary source data as much as you can. Okay. In theory, it's more valid. Because somebody actually said that. Right? It's
Right.
not a math model that generated it or anything like that. You know, most of this, Google, a little bit of time will find you sources. The other thing I would tell you is government sources are generally reliable. The other place I would tell you that's another good source is there's economic institutes, and they generally have good reliable data too. They're nonprofits. And you might find those kinds of nonprofits in your specific industry space. You know, that will have good data for you.
great.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, but honestly, start with Google and don't pay for anything. Just keep looking until you find some good data. Okay? It shouldn't take you that long. Like I said, I spent 20 minutes finding the coffee date. Right? And I showed you, there's good data and bad data. And you know, you wanna find it as recent as possible. You wanna find it from a government source if possible, or a census data if possible, etc. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground today. A lot of ground. And I will tell you that these two principles, these two tasks that we covered tonight, some business owners never get them. They never even try to understand them. So you're ahead of lots of potential business owners just by finishing these tasks.
Yeah.
And it will make you a tremendously better business because you'll be able to know how viable you are and what you need to do.
Oh yes, the problem of other people is that they don't know that it's important.
Right,
And they
exactly.
waste time and money.
Yeah, they'll spend dollar after dollar after dollar and never know what they're trying to find. What they're trying to reach. So we're trying to get to the objective first. And then we'll make spending decisions later.
Would it be possible to get the documents that you were showing on screen?
I'm gonna send you all those links, yep. I'm gonna send you all those links. Okay. Excellent. So I think we've made it to our time. I'm here if anybody wants to talk through their own situation, wants to get some insight on their assignment, or just talk through one of their assignments or tasks they were working on, whatever, I'm here. The rest of the team, I think, can leave if they are ready to.
I'm Scott, and everyone. I'm so thrilled to see you in these sessions. I still remember when I've been to Israel, and people, you know, in later years of their life, still starting business, and the record that I have is one man's he's in his 72.
72.
Yeah, after retirement, and he wants to start a business. You know, it's not about making money, not just about making money. It's you enjoy fun doing business. You know? So I see you here, very thrilled.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
does anybody want office hour time? Rachel,
No, I'm saying
just
thank
waving goodbye, okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
As
You're
long
very
as-
welcome. So
Yeah,
I
do
will
apologize
send,
for being late.
you're very welcome. I will send out everything that I showed you tonight. I will send out your homework assignment, which is basically, if you didn't finish your persona and your market calculations, you have to finish them. So that's what we worked through today. So you just have to go back and work through it. Okay? Nothing new, just completing the tasks we worked on. All right, you guys have a great couple days. We will both be here again on Thursday night with you.
Yes.
Great. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye. See you Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Good night.